You are about to be asked on a real date by someone whose voice is recognized by millions of people, but they need you to keep one secret until tomorrow night. Not because they are ashamed of you. Not because they want to hide you permanently. And not because fame gives them the right to control your life. At midnight tomorrow, the contract that has controlled their identity, relationships, music, and public image for almost 9 years will finally expire. Until then, one photograph, one message, or one careless public comment could allow their management company to seize the songs they created, cancel the return of their legal name, and accuse you of planning the entire relationship for money. Your soulmate has already prepared the question they want to ask you. It is written on the back of an ordinary paper receipt from the community kitchen where both of you first met. But before they give it to you, they need you to hear the truth. The world knows them as Aster, the mysterious singer who performs behind a silver mask and has never publicly revealed their face. You know them as Eli. And the secret that brought your soulmate to tears is that you recognized them on the first night, but protected their identity before they ever asked you to. This is not a prediction that every viewer will suddenly date a celebrity. It is a story about private identity, public fame, manufactured relationships, and the rare person who can recognize someone extraordinary without trying to own what they discover. Aster was one of the most famous musical artists in the world. Their songs played inside stadiums, airports, wedding receptions, hospital rooms, and cars traveling through the night. Their first album became successful almost without warning. Their second turned the hidden performer into an international mystery. No verified photograph of Aster's full face had ever been released. During concerts, they wore a thin silver mask covering the upper part of the face. Interviews were filmed in shadow. Public appearances were carefully controlled. Even award ceremonies allowed Aster to enter through private routes and leave before crowds gathered. Fans created thousands of theories. Some believed Aster was already a famous actor using another identity. Others thought the performer was part of a group rather than one person. Several magazines published photographs of innocent strangers and claimed they had discovered the truth. The mystery increased the fame. It also became a prison. Aster's real name was Elias Rowan, although very few people were permitted to use it. They had signed their first management agreement at 19, before anyone knew how powerful their voice would become. Their original manager, Mara Vane, promised protection from the cruelty of the entertainment industry. Elias had always experienced intense anxiety around cameras. Performing music felt natural. Being photographed, examined, and followed did not. Mara developed the hidden identity concept. At first, it appeared compassionate. The mask allowed Elias to sing without becoming visually recognizable. They could travel without crowds, visit family, and live ordinary parts of life without every stranger holding up a phone. The contract described the silver mask as a temporary creative choice. When Aster became famous, temporary became valuable. The management company registered the stage identity, visual appearance, mask design, and public mythology as commercial assets. Elias could not reveal their face, legal name, location, romantic relationship, or personal history without approval. If they violated the agreement, the company could claim ownership of unreleased music and demand repayment of enormous promotional costs. Mara said the restrictions were necessary. "The mystery is not separate from the music," she told Elias. "The mystery is what allows the world to hear it." For years, Elias accepted that explanation. The career grew. Their freedom became smaller. Every public friendship was reviewed. Every interview answer was prepared. Hotels were booked under rotating names. Phones provided by management contained monitoring software designed to prevent location leaks. The company also controlled the public story around love. Aster's songs were deeply romantic, but the performer was presented as emotionally unreachable. Fans were encouraged to imagine that no one had ever completely captured the heart behind the mask. Mara called it universal availability. Elias called it loneliness. The night both of you met, Aster had just completed the final show of a world tour. 50,000 people had repeated every lyric while silver lights moved across the stadium. 2 hours later, Elias sat alone inside a private vehicle while managers discussed merchandise numbers, press coverage, and the next album. No one asked how the performance felt. Mara handed Elias a schedule covering the following 6 months. It contained recording sessions, promotional appearances, controlled breaks, brand meetings, and several rehearsed public encounters with a famous actor named Sienna Vale. The company planned to suggest a possible romance between Aster and Sienna. Neither person was expected to confirm anything. They only needed to appear near the same locations, exchange carefully visible gifts, and allow entertainment media to create the story. Elias refused. Mara said the arrangement would redirect attention from renewed investigations into Aster's real identity. She explained that Sienna's upcoming film needed publicity and Aster's album required an emotional narrative. Both careers would benefit. Elias asked whether Sienna agreed. Mara said her team had approved it. "That was not my question," Elias answered. The meeting became tense. Mara reminded Elias that the contract remained active for another year. She said personal discomfort could not override strategic obligations. After everyone left, Elias changed into ordinary clothing, placed a dark cap over their hair, and walked for almost an hour without knowing where they were going. Rain began. The streets emptied. Near midnight, Elias entered a small community kitchen called the Second Table because the lights were still on. The Second Table served meals to night shift workers, families experiencing temporary hardship, people living without stable housing, and anyone who arrived hungry. It did not require visitors to prove poverty or explain their circumstances. A sign near the door said, "If you eat here, you belong here. If you help here, someone else eats." You were standing behind a long metal counter, placing soup into containers. Elias asked whether food was still available. "You said, food is available, but I need someone to cut bread." Elias looked surprised. "You added, you can eat first. The bread will still be emotionally difficult afterward." They laughed. It was the first unplanned laugh they had experienced in weeks. "You gave them an apron and introduced yourself." Elias paused before saying their name. Eli. You looked at them for 1 second longer than expected. Then you said, Eli, the bread has done nothing wrong. Please be kind to it. Both of you worked until nearly 2 in the morning. Elias expected recognition. No one reacted. The kitchen followed an unusual rule created after volunteers began filming vulnerable visitors for social media content: no personal photographs inside the building. Phones remained inside lockers during service. People could speak without wondering whether their worst night might become someone else's inspirational post. Elias returned the following week. Then again. They told management the visits were private therapy appointments. The company had encouraged therapy for public image purposes and rarely asked for details. At the second table, Elias washed dishes, carried boxes, repaired loose shelves, and learned that industrial ovens could become more temperamental than musicians. You did not ask where they worked. They said they traveled often. You assumed they worked in live production, photography, or event logistics. Their hands carried small marks from instruments, but the kitchen attracted many people with unusual histories. The voice was harder to ignore. The first night, Elias spoke quietly. On the second visit, they sang one line absent-mindedly while moving food into storage. You knew immediately. Aster had a distinctive break between the lowest note and the middle range. Music critics described it as a controlled imperfection. You had heard it hundreds of times. You recognized the rhythm of their breathing. You recognized the small laugh hidden inside the end of certain words. But you said nothing. You did not search beneath the cap. You did not attempt to photograph them. You did not tell the other volunteers. That evening, after Elias left, you wrote one sentence on the back of a second table receipt: Eli is Aster. That changes nothing about how they should be treated here. You dated it, folded it, and placed it inside the kitchen's locked volunteer logbook. The logbook contained private incident notes and could be opened only by the program director. You added the note because you wanted a record proving when you recognized them. Not to protect yourself from Elias. To protect Elias if someone later accused you of discovering the truth only after becoming emotionally close. You understood what fame could make people fear. Elias continued returning. At first, your conversations remained simple. You discussed food, bad weather, broken equipment, and the unusual objects people donated to the kitchen. One evening, someone donated 80 identical jars of mustard. You spent weeks inventing reasons to use them. Another night, the freezer stopped working and both of you moved food across the city inside borrowed vehicles before sunrise. Elias apologized for being unable to drive because their management agreement restricted the use of unapproved vehicles. You assumed they were joking. They said, "My work has too many rules." You answered, "Rules protecting people can be useful." Rules protecting control usually introduce themselves as safety. Elias remembered that sentence. It appeared months later inside an unreleased song. The friendship deepened during quiet moments after service. When the last visitor left and the kitchen had been cleaned, both of you sat near the back door drinking tea that was always too strong. Elias asked what you wanted from life. You said you wanted to create a mobile food program for neighborhoods without reliable public transport. Many people did not lack available services, they lacked a practical way to reach them. You had developed a plan but could not secure funding. Elias offered to introduce you to someone. You refused immediately. They looked offended. You explained, "I did not say no forever. I said no until I know whether the introduction belongs to you or to whatever organization controls your work." Elias stared at you. It was the closest you had come to revealing that you knew. They asked, "What do you think controls my work?" You answered, "You become quieter whenever your phone lights up. That usually means the device is not serving the person holding it." Elias turned the phone face down. They did not ask another question. The relationship changed slowly. Neither person called it romantic at first. Elias still lived inside a controlled public identity. You understood that secrecy could make ordinary affection feel more intense than it truly was. You refused to build a future around mystery alone. When Elias began arriving earlier simply to spend time with you, you said, "I like you, but I will not become a hidden room where someone visits only when the rest of their life becomes unbearable." They listened. You continued, "If privacy is what you need, I respect privacy. If secrecy is what someone else requires from you, that is different." Elias said their work situation was complicated. You answered, "Complicated is information. It is not an explanation." That night, Elias almost told you everything. They had prepared the words. Then Mara called. The management company had discovered unusual travel patterns. A car assigned to Elias had been seen near the second table several times. Mara asked whether anyone there recognized them. Elias said no. Mara warned that local contact could become dangerous. A volunteer might sell the location, photograph the face, or claim a relationship. She said, "Ordinary people can become very ambitious when fame enters the room." Elias looked through the kitchen window while you stacked containers inside. They defended you. Mara replied, "You defended the last assistant too." They sold your hotel information within a month. The betrayal was real. Years earlier, someone Elias trusted had leaked a private photograph to a magazine. Another friend secretly recorded a conversation and attempted to sell it after a disagreement. Fame had taught Elias to search for hidden transactions inside affection. You felt different. That difference frightened them. The following week, Elias asked whether you had ever suspected they were someone well known. You could have answered directly. Instead, you asked, "Would the answer change what you are ready to tell me?" They said no. You replied, "Then tell me when you are ready to be honest rather than when fear makes you test me." Elias understood the boundary. They also became more convinced that you knew. Mara ordered a private investigation into you. The management company examined your work history, finances, social media accounts, personal relationships, and connection to the second table. Investigators found no attempt to contact journalists, fan accounts, or entertainment companies. They did find your mobile food proposal. Mara interpreted it as possible motive. She suggested you might be building trust with Elias to obtain funding. Elias said you had refused an introduction. Mara answered, refusal can create a stronger obligation than asking. Every action could be given a suspicious meaning. You asked for nothing, so you were playing a longer game. You respected privacy, so you understood secrecy's value. You refused professional help, so you wanted emotional leverage first. Mara had spent years converting human behavior into risk analysis. Elias started questioning moments that had once felt safe. Then a celebrity news website contacted the second table. A reporter claimed a globally famous musician had been visiting under an assumed name. The program director denied knowledge and refused access. The reporter offered money to volunteers. No one accepted. 2 nights later, a blurred photograph appeared online. It showed someone resembling Elias entering the kitchen. The face could not be seen. The article asked, is Aster secretly volunteering, or secretly meeting someone? Mara became furious. She said the leak proved someone inside the kitchen had been watching. Elias asked whether you had spoken to anyone. You said no. They asked whether the program director knew their identity. You said, they know that every person inside this building deserves privacy. That is enough. Elias asked whether you knew. This time, you answered, yes. The room became completely still. They asked when you recognized them. You said, the first night. Elias stepped backward. For months, they had interpreted your silence as evidence that you saw only Eli. Now the silence looked intentional. They asked why you never said anything. You replied, because you gave me a name. Until you changed it, that was the name I had permission to use. They asked whether you told anyone. You said no. They asked whether you kept proof. You said yes. That answer frightened them. What proof? You explained the dated receipt inside the locked volunteer logbook. Elias's face changed. They heard only that you had created a record connecting them to Aster. They asked whether you planned to use it. You said, I created it to prove I knew before there was anything between us and still told no one. They replied, that could also prove you were planning for this. The accusation hurt. You understood why it existed. Understanding did not make it harmless. You said, you are allowed to verify the note through the program director. You are not allowed to turn every act of care into evidence that I am waiting to betray you. Elias said they needed time. You answered, take time. Do not send investigators into my life again. Their silence confirmed the investigation. You realized the management company had examined you. You removed the apron and left before service ended. Elias did not follow. Mara used the conflict immediately. She said your anger proved you expected access and recognition. She advised Elias never to return to the second table. The company prepared a legal warning instructing you not to discuss Aster's identity, visits, or private conversations. The document included severe financial threats. Elias refused to send it. Mara said refusing protection endangered the entire team. Elias answered, "They protected my identity before anyone asked." Mara replied, "Or they understood its future value." Elias remained away from the kitchen for 6 weeks. You received no message. The celebrity article disappeared after the management company threatened legal action. Public interest moved elsewhere. Volunteers stopped discussing the blurred photograph. Life at the second table continued. You continued working. But the relationship had changed you. You had provided someone one place where they could enter without performing. The moment they learned you understood the performance, they treated your kindness like strategy. You decided not to contact them. Not because you wanted to punish them. Because their identity belonged to them, and the next honest action had to come from the person carrying it. During those 6 weeks, Elias began reviewing the contract controlling Aster. The agreement was due to expire in 8 months. Mara expected them to renew for another decade. She offered more money, greater creative control, and a promise to reduce restrictions around private relationships. The new contract still allowed management to approve any public romantic connection. It also transferred permanent ownership of the Aster name, mask, and visual identity to the company. If Elias refused, they could keep their legal name and face, but might lose the stage identity under which every album had been released. Mara believed they would never walk away from Aster. Elias began working with an independent attorney named Naomi Park. Naomi discovered that several contract extensions had been activated through misleading amendments. Some promotional expenses used to justify the restrictions were inflated. The company had charged Elias for security, transportation, and brand protection while using many of those services to monitor them. The legal challenge could return ownership of unreleased music and possibly the Aster identity when the contract expired. But Elias needed to avoid giving the company a new violation. A public face reveal, romantic announcement, or identity leak before the expiration date could trigger emergency clauses allowing management to freeze the music and claim damages. Mara knew Elias was preparing to leave. She accelerated the staged romance with Sienna Vale. Photographers captured Sienna entering the same hotel where Aster was staying. Entertainment outlets published stories about secret meetings. A gift supposedly sent by Aster appeared on Sienna's social media. Elias had not chosen it. Sienna had not posted it personally. Both management teams created the interaction. Elias contacted Sienna privately through attorneys. She confirmed that she also disliked the arrangement but faced pressure from her studio. They agreed to document everything. The false romance would become evidence of how entertainment companies manufactured personal narratives. Mara then produced a second strategy. If Elias refused renewal and revealed their connection to you after the contract expired, management would describe you as the person who manipulated Aster into leaving. A draft article had already been written. It called you a struggling community organizer who discovered Elias's identity and developed a relationship while seeking funding for a private project. It included your financial difficulties, the mobile food proposal, and the existence of the dated receipt. The story would say you documented recognition from the beginning because you planned to prove access later. Mara intended to release it the moment Elias spoke your name. Elias finally understood why the receipt mattered. It could be presented as manipulation. It could also prove extraordinary restraint. The difference depended upon who controlled the surrounding truth. Elias returned to the second table after closing time. You were repairing a loose cabinet door. They stood near the entrance without the cap. For the first time, you saw their full face clearly. Not Aster's shadow. Not the blurred image online. Eli. You continued tightening the hinge. They said, I should have believed what your silence had already demonstrated. You answered, you should have asked questions without making suspicion the price of answering. They agreed. Then they told you about the contract, the planned article, and the staged relationship with Sienna. You listened without interrupting. Elias said they wanted to leave management when the contract expired. They wanted to reveal their identity on their own terms. They also wanted to return to the second table without pretending the kitchen was merely a place to escape. Then they said, I want to ask you on a date. You looked around the empty kitchen. You have eaten here beside me at least 20 times. Elias smiled. A date where I arrive as myself, tell you where I actually work, and do not leave when a monitored phone calls. You asked why the question could not be answered tonight. They explained the legal deadline. The contract expired at midnight tomorrow. Until then, any public confirmation could allow Mara's company to claim a violation and freeze the master recordings proving Elias created the next album independently. You said, my answer is not public. Elias replied, the management company monitors more than the public. They are watching my devices, the building, and everyone connected to the investigation. You asked whether meeting you tonight already created risk. They said yes. Then you told them to leave. Elias looked devastated. You added, leave before fear turns this conversation into another secret someone else owns. Send the question after midnight from a device you chose. They understood. You were not rejecting the date. You were refusing to let the first honest request happen inside surveillance. Before leaving, Elias asked for permission to view the receipt. The program director opened the locked logbook in front of both of you. The receipt remained inside its dated entry. On the front was the ordinary kitchen total from the first night. On the back, you had written, Eli is Aster. That changes nothing about how they should be treated here. Below it was another sentence Elias had never known existed. If this person returns, no volunteer should photograph, reveal, or pressure them. Fame does not cancel the right to enter hungry and leave unrecorded. The program director had signed beneath it. The note was not a private trophy. It became a privacy instruction protecting Elias before the friendship developed. Your soulmate began crying. Mara's investigators had examined your life for motive. The clearest record showed that your first response to recognizing a famous person was not ambition. It was protection. Elias asked why you never mentioned the second sentence. You answered, because good boundaries do not need to be performed for the person benefiting from them. That night, Elias gave Naomi permission to include the receipt inside the legal evidence archive. The original remained with the second table. A verified copy would be released only if management published the false article. Mara could still accuse you. She could no longer control the evidence alone. The final 24 hours became increasingly intense. Mara scheduled an emergency meeting and offered Elias complete freedom to date privately if they renewed the contract. Elias asked why freedom required another signature. She said the company needed stability. Elias answered, "You mean ownership." Mara reminded them that Aster existed because she created the mask, marketing, and mystery. Elias said, "You created a strategy. You did not create the person who survived inside it." Mara threatened to release the article about you. Elias placed the verified receipt, Sienna's testimony, inflated expense records, and monitoring evidence on the table. They said, if you publish it, the complete archive is released at the same time. For the first time, Mara understood that fear was no longer enough. She changed tactics. She said the public would never accept an ordinary person beside Aster. Fans would investigate your family, work, and past. Strangers would accuse you of using Elias regardless of evidence. Elias said, "That may happen." Mara asked whether love was worth destroying the career. Elias replied, "A career that requires another innocent person to be destroyed is already destroying me." They did not announce a relationship. There was no relationship to announce yet. They were preparing to ask one person for one date. That difference mattered. Fame had trained everyone to treat personal connection like a public campaign. Elias wanted to begin with something smaller. A question. An answer. A table without cameras. Sienna's team withdrew from the staged romance plan. She released no dramatic statement, but her attorney preserved evidence proving the hotel photographs were arranged. At 11:58 tomorrow night, Elias sits inside an independent recording studio with Naomi and a small technical team. The final contract clock appears on a monitor. Mara's company sends one last renewal offer. Elias does not open it. At midnight, the restrictions expire. The unreleased album masters transfer into the independent creative trust Naomi established. The legal name Elias Rowan can be connected publicly to Aster without triggering the old penalty. The company still owns certain promotional assets, but it no longer owns the right to determine who exists beneath them. Elias removes the silver mask. There is no stadium. No dramatic press conference. No audience counting down. The first action of their newly restored freedom is not a public reveal. It is a message to you. Your phone lights up at 12:03. The message contains a photograph of the old second table receipt. Elias has written one new sentence beneath your original note. Now that I can arrive as the whole person, will you let me take you on one honest date? No threat. No command to answer immediately. No claim that fame makes the invitation extraordinary. You wait until morning. Elias spends the night believing your silence may be the answer. But they do not send another message. They have finally learned that another person's quiet does not exist only to relieve their fear. At 8:14, you reply, one date. No cameras. No staged arrivals. No public story before we decide whether there is a private one. Elias answers, yes. You add, and the second table chooses the food. They reply, anything except mustard. The date takes place after the kitchen closes. Not inside a luxury restaurant. Not on a yacht prepared for magazine photographs. Not inside a private room filled with security staff pretending not to listen. The same metal table has been cleaned. The program director leaves 2 plates and locks the front door. A volunteer places the phones inside the usual lockers. Elias arrives without the mask. They are nervous in a way stadium performances never make them nervous. You ask whether the world knows yet. They say no. Their public identity statement will be released the following day, but it will focus upon creative ownership, contract restrictions, and the right of artists to control personal information. Your name will not appear. The date will not become content. Elias says, if we choose to continue, I will not pretend you do not exist. But I will not turn the beginning into evidence for strangers either. You ask what happens when journalists discover the connection. They answer honestly. People may investigate. Some fans may become cruel. Others may create fantasies about a relationship they do not understand. Security planning will be necessary. Ordinary privacy may never be completely possible. They will not tell you fame has no cost. They will not ask you to accept every cost in the name of love. You discuss what dating could realistically mean. No surprise photographers. No financial gifts before both people agree upon boundaries. No access to your private work without permission. No management team contacting your family. No anonymous investigations disguised as protection. Any genuine safety concern must be shared directly whenever legally possible. You also accept responsibility for your own silence. You explain why you did not tell Elias you recognized them. At first, privacy felt obviously respectful. Later, you worried that revealing your knowledge might make every earlier moment appear calculated. You began waiting for a perfect opportunity. The perfect opportunity never arrived. You say, I protected your right to choose when you told me. But eventually, I also avoided the discomfort of telling you I already knew. Elias understands. Your silence was not betrayal. It still influenced the misunderstanding. Honest connection requires both people to explain where protection ends and avoidance begins. Elias asks why you agreed to the date after everything. You do not say destiny. You do not say the universe promised a famous person. You say, because when no one was watching, you cut bread badly, stayed to clean the floor, and listened when people spoke without trying to turn their pain into a song. That is the person you are considering dating. Not Aster. Not the silver mask. Not the awards, millions of followers, or headlines. Eli. The person who entered hungry and helped someone else eat. Elias says they are frightened you will eventually miss the ordinary person once fame enters the relationship openly. You answer, I may discover that this life is not healthy for me. You may discover that privacy boundaries make the relationship too difficult. One honest date is not a lifelong contract. The words do not reduce the romance. They make it real. A date is not destiny. Attraction is not ownership. Love cannot be promised before two people experience how their values survive ordinary time and extraordinary pressure. The public identity statement is released the following afternoon. Aster appears without the silver mask for the first time. Elias explains that the hidden identity originally protected anxiety but later became something a company controlled. They thank listeners for respecting the music while asking people not to investigate private individuals or organizations connected to their life. Mara's company releases a statement saying it supported Elias's creative choices throughout the career. The Independent Archive tells a more complicated story. Journalists report on restrictive contracts, staged relationships, device monitoring, and inflated security expenses. Sienna confirms that the rumored romance was arranged without genuine personal involvement. The false article about you is never published. Several outlets still attempt to identify the ordinary volunteer rumored to be close to Elias. The second table refuses every interview. The program director says, "We serve food. We do not serve people to the internet." Donations increase after the kitchen is mentioned indirectly. You establish rules preventing the new attention from turning visitors into publicity. Elias contributes anonymously through the Independent Trust, but the funding agreement gives the second table complete control. No name appears on the wall. No promotional video is required. You do not allow romance to become the price of support. The mobile food program eventually begins through several community funders, not through one celebrity. Elias introduces you to no one until you request it. The relationship develops slowly. Some dates are private and ordinary. Others require security planning. Sometimes you become frustrated because a quiet walk turns into a logistical discussion. Sometimes Elias becomes frightened when a stranger lifts a phone. Both of you learn that protecting privacy together is different from hiding one person. Privacy creates boundaries chosen by both people. Hiding creates a hierarchy where one person is treated as a problem. Several months later, Elias asks whether you are ready to appear publicly beside them. You say no. They accept the answer. Later, you decide to attend a small benefit concert for the second table. You do not enter through a dramatic red carpet. You sit with volunteers. Your name appears in the program only beside the mobile food project. Elias performs one new song. It contains the line, "You knew the voice and kept the door ordinary." Before releasing it, they asked whether the lyric could remain. You said yes. They did not tell the world the complete private story. Consent remains more important than the beauty of the marketing opportunity. At the end of the performance, Elias does not announce you as their soulmate. They thank the second table for teaching them that a person can be recognized without being consumed. Only both of you understand the full meaning. Your soulmate once believed being famous meant everyone approaching them wanted something. You showed them that someone could recognize the most valuable secret in the room and respond by strengthening the lock around it. But your care does not mean you should ignore your own needs. A relationship with a famous person is not automatically a reward. Visibility can create pressure. Security can limit spontaneity. Public opinion can enter moments that should belong to two people. You are allowed to say yes slowly. You are allowed to request privacy. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to love the person while rejecting the lifestyle surrounding them. The healthiest part of the story is not that a celebrity chose you. It is that both people finally gain the freedom to choose one another without a company writing the answer first. Your soulmate's final private message says, I spent years believing the person who discovered my identity would eventually use it. You discovered it immediately and protected the ordinary version of me before I knew how much I needed that place. Then, I mistook your silence for strategy because fame had taught me that every kindness hid a transaction. Finally, you did not fall in love with the mask, and you did not demand that I remove it. You waited until I could choose who saw me. That is why a famous person is about to ask you on a date. Not because fate has guaranteed a glamorous future. Not because millions of people admire them. Not because being selected by fame proves your worth. They want to date you because you treated them with dignity when revealing their identity could have changed your life. You recognized the voice. You protected the name. You refused to trade privacy for attention. And when the truth finally arrived, you still demanded honesty, boundaries, and equal choice. Comment: real love sees the person behind the image. If you believe privacy, consent, and direct communication matter more than status. Like this video if you believe genuine connection is revealed through what people do when no audience is present, and subscribe for more emotional stories about hidden identity, fame, truth, and self-respect. You may date this famous person very soon, but keeping quiet does not mean becoming their permanent secret. The temporary silence protects a legal deadline. After that, the choice must become honest. The mask is coming off. The staged romance is ending. The false article has been stopped. The dated receipt proves you knew from the first night. And the question waiting on the other side of midnight is not whether you want fame. It is much simpler. Will you let the person behind it sit across from you for one honest date?